The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before the Imperial scout vessel Eternal Dawn as it floated silently at the edge of humanity's home system. The ship's sleek, silvery hull reflected the distant starlight, making it shimmer like a jewel against the black canvas of space. Inside the vessel's command bridge, the air hummed with the soft whir of advanced machinery and quiet murmurs of the crew at their stations. Commander Ta Sung Park's stern face was illuminated by the blue glow of the holographic display hovering before him. His sharp features remained unchanging as he studied the detailed projection of Earth and its colonies. The display showed countless lights representing human settlements, space stations, and orbital platforms scattered throughout the solar system. His dark uniform, adorned with the golden insignia of the Imperial fleet, seemed to absorb the light around him. Another backward species, he muttered to himself, though his eyes narrowed at the unexpected level of development displayed before him. The humans had spread further than initial reports had suggested, with bustling colonies on Mars gleaming like red jewels in the hologram. The soft sound of approaching footsteps drew his attention. Lieutenant Jin Ali, his trusted second-in-command, walked briskly toward him, her boots making barely a sound on the polished deck. Her usual confident expression carried an unusual hint of worry as she held out a data tablet. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, her voice steady despite her concern. "Our deep scans are showing something unexpected. These humans, they're far more advanced than our initial estimates suggested." Tae Sung took the tablet, his eyes scanning the streams of data. The humans had established not just basic outposts, but fully functioning colonies on Mars. Their lunar base sprawled across the surface of their moon, and smaller settlements dotted the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Their ships, while not as elegant as Imperial vessels, showed signs of sophisticated engineering. "Look at their energy readings," Jinnah continued, pointing to a specific section of the data. "They've mastered fusion technology, and these readings suggest they might be close to cracking antimatter containment. Their development rate is unprecedented." Commander Ta Sung's face darkened momentarily before he forced a dismissive smile. "Lieutenant, you worry too much. Yes, they've made some progress, but look at the scale." He gestured to the hologram. "They're still trapped in their own system. The Empire spans thousands of worlds across multiple galactic arms. We have technologies they couldn't even dream of." Deep below the surface of Luna, in a state-of-the-art command center hidden from prying eyes, Admiral Ha-Won Kang sat in her dimly lit office. Multiple screens surrounded her, each displaying different intercepted Imperial communications. Her weathered face broke into a knowing smile as she decoded another transmission from the scout vessel. The Admiral's fingers danced across her console, adding new data to an already massive collection of Imperial intelligence. For 20 years, Earth's hidden listening posts had been gathering information about the Empire. They knew their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Every time the Empire thought they were observing Earth, Earth was really observing them. "Send this to analysis," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service. "And maintain radio silence. Let them think we're just another primitive civilization." As she spoke, deep in the asteroid belt, massive shipyards hidden within hollowed-out asteroids continued their work. The Empire's sensors couldn't detect the quantum shielding that masked their energy signatures. Humanity had learned early on how to hide their true capabilities. The Eternal Dawn continued its observation, its crew confident in their technological superiority, never realizing they were the ones being studied. Commander Ta Sung's dismissive attitude was exactly what Earth's military leadership had hoped for. The Empire's greatest weakness had always been its arrogance, and humanity was counting on that arrogance for what was to come. Admiral Kang opened a secure channel to the United Earth Defense Council. "The Imperial Scout is exactly where we predicted. All pieces are in position." She paused, allowing herself a small smile. "They have no idea what they're walking into." In the depths of space, The Eternal Dawn maintained its vigilant watch, its crew blissfully unaware that they weren't the hunters they believed themselves to be. They were the prey. Humanity's trap was set, and the Empire was walking right into it. The massive Imperial diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere like a shining silver cloud, its hull gleaming in the morning sunlight. Crowds gathered in the streets of New Geneva, their faces turned skyward as the enormous ship, nearly a kilometer in length, came to rest above the United Earth Council headquarters. The ship's presence cast a literal and figurative shadow over the city, exactly as its designers had intended. Ambassador Du Hyun Choi stood before a mirror in his private chamber aboard the vessel, adjusting his ceremonial robes one final time. The deep purple fabric, woven with threads of precious metals found only in the Empire's core worlds, sparkled with every movement. His expression remained carefully neutral, masking his disdain for this backwater system and its inhabitants. The Imperial delegation descended from their ship on a beam of golden light, a calculated display of technological superiority. 50 Imperial guards in gleaming armor flanked the ambassador and his aides, their energy weapons prominently displayed. The show of force was unnecessary. The Empire had conquered thousands of worlds with this same diplomatic dance. Inside the council chambers, Council President Sunmei Kim sat at the head of a long table made from polished oak. The chamber's ancient architecture, with its wooden panels and traditional decorations, presented an image of quaint simplicity that the Empire's representatives would undoubtedly interpret as primitive. This was exactly as planned. Defense Minister Jae-ho-buk sat to her right, his military uniform plain compared to the Imperial delegation's ornate attire. His tablet, appearing to be simple Earth technology, silently recorded and analyzed every piece of Imperial equipment that entered the room. Ambassador Choi strode into the chamber like he owned it, his robes sweeping dramatically behind him. The Imperial guards took positions along the walls, their armor making soft whirring sounds with each movement. The ambassador's thin lips curved into what he believed was a gracious smile. "Esteemed representatives of Earth," he began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia of Imperial authority, "I come before you with an opportunity. The Galactic Empire has watched your development with great interest. We believe you are ready to join our grand civilization." President Kim's face remained carefully neutral, though her eyes showed polite interest. Below the council chamber, 20 levels deep in the mountain fortress, Dr. Yum-Ho Nam and his team watched the proceedings on their screens. Their advanced sensors, hidden in the chamber's wooden panels, gathered data on every piece of Imperial technology present. "Your species has shown promise," Ambassador Choi continued, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber with images of the Empire's worlds. "Under Imperial guidance, you could achieve greatness. Your people would have access to technologies beyond your imagination. Your children would grow up as citizens of the greatest civilization in history." The holographic images shifted, showing gleaming cities, advanced spacecraft, and countless alien species living under Imperial rule. It was meant to awe and inspire. Instead, Dr. Nam's hidden sensors captured and analyzed every detail of the holographic technology, confirming their countermeasures would work perfectly. President Kim leaned forward slightly. "And if we choose not to accept this generous offer?" The ambassador's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "The Empire has brought civilization to thousands of worlds. Some required convincing. Join willingly, and your transition will be peaceful. Resist, and face annihilation. The choice is yours, but I advise you to choose wisely." Defense Minister Baek coughed quietly into his hand, a signal to the hidden technicians to begin their final analysis. In his underground lab, Dr. Nam nodded with satisfaction. Every piece of Imperial technology they'd observed matched their previous intelligence exactly. Their countermeasures would work even better than expected. "This is a significant decision," President Kim responded carefully. "Surely you understand we need time to consider your offer and consult with our people." The ambassador nodded magnanimously. "Of course, The Empire is generous. You have one standard week to provide your answer. He rose from his seat, his robes shimmering. Choose wisely, Council President. The Empire's patience has limits. As the Imperial delegation departed in their beam of golden light, President Kim and Minister Baek shared a knowing look. In his underground lab, Dr. Nam sent a single encrypted message. All systems confirmed. Operation Trojan Horse is ready. The Empire thought they were offering Earth the choice between submission and destruction. They had no idea that Earth had already chosen a third option, one that would shake the Empire to its foundations. As the Imperial ship rose into the sky, humanity's hidden preparations continued, counting down to the moment when they would show the galaxy that humanity would never kneel. The Imperial Armada cut through space like a swarm of deadly insects, their ships arranged in the traditional crescent formation that had conquered 1,000 worlds. 5,000 vessels strong, their polished hulls reflected the distant sunlight, creating a curtain of artificial stars advancing toward Earth. At the head of this mighty fleet, aboard the flagship Imperial Wrath, Admiral Min Ki-song stood proudly on his command bridge. "Primitive fools," he muttered, watching the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. They had their chance to submit peacefully. His fingers traced the planned assault vectors, each one calculated to crush any resistance within hours. The bridge crew worked silently at their stations, monitoring sensors and maintaining formation. None dared speak unless spoken to. Admiral Song's reputation for harsh discipline was well known throughout the fleet. The massive viewscreen showed nothing but empty space ahead, exactly as expected. "Begin standard invasion protocol," Admiral Song commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Launch fighter screens and prepare the first wave off." His orders were cut short by a sudden alarm. Red lights flashed across every console as the sensor officer's voice cracked with surprise. Multiple contacts. Massive energy signatures appearing in the Kuiper Belt. Hidden among the icy rocks at the edge of the solar system, Earth's true fleet had waited patiently. Captain De Jung Ryu sat calmly in the command chair of the HSS Defiant, watching as thousands of human warships powered up their quantum phase drives simultaneously. The ships had been invisible to Imperial sensors, their revolutionary stealth systems making them indistinguishable from the surrounding space rocks. "All ships, this is Defiant Actual," De Jung transmitted, her voice steady and confident. "The enemy has taken the bait. Power up all systems and prepare to execute Pattern Omega." She turned to her tactical officer. "Show them what humanity is capable of." The Empire's sensors struggled to make sense of what they were seeing. Where there had been nothing but ice and rock moments before, now there appeared a vast fleet of ships, unlike anything in Imperial records. Their hulls seemed to shift and ripple, bending light around them in impossible ways. Admiral Song's face contorted with rage and disbelief. Impossible. Their technology level was assessed. They shouldn't have this capability. He slammed his fist on the command console. "All ships, battle formations. Crush these upstart." The first wave of Earth's attack hit before he could finish the order. The quantum phase drives, developed in secret by Dr. Hyun Woo Shin, allowed human ships to partially exist in multiple phases of space-time simultaneously. Imperial targeting systems simply couldn't lock onto vessels that weren't fully present in normal space. De Jun watched with grim satisfaction as the first salvos struck home. Imperial ships, their shields useless against weapons they couldn't properly detect, erupted in silent explosions. "Execute full spread pattern," she ordered. "Remember your training. They can't hit what they can't properly see." The human fleet moved like a school of fish, their formations fluid and unpredictable. Years of preparation and training paid off as they executed complex maneuvers that would have been impossible with conventional drives. Each ship could partially phase shift, making them appear to be in multiple places at once. Admiral Song's prestigious career, built on decades of successful conquests, began to unravel before his eyes. His perfectly arranged formation, designed to overwhelm primitive planetary defenses, now found itself fragmented and confused. "Return fire! Return fire!" he shouted, but his gunners couldn't get solid locks on the phase-shifting human vessels. "Their formation is breaking," Dejung observed calmly. She opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "This is what we've trained for." The Empire thought they were dealing with primitive savages. Let's show them how wrong they were. The battle unfolded like nothing recorded in Imperial military history. Human ships seemed to flicker in and out of existence, appearing within the Imperial formation to deliver devastating blows before shifting away from retaliatory fire. Dr. Shin's quantum phase technology didn't just make the ships hard to target. It made conventional tactical doctrine completely useless. "Admiral," one of SOM's officers reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost contact with the entire third wing. Our ships, they're being torn apart, and we can't even get proper target locks." The mighty Imperial Armada, pride of the galaxy's greatest civilization, found itself in a situation it had never trained for, fighting an enemy that could partially exist outside normal spacetime. As more Imperial ships erupted in flames, Admiral Song realized with growing horror that his empire's technological superiority had been an illusion. Captain Dejung Ryu allowed herself a small smile as she watched the Imperial formation collapse into chaos. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment, developing technologies and tactics specifically designed to counter Imperial warfare doctrine. As her fleet executed another perfectly coordinated attack run, she knew the Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. Space lit up with the flashes of energy weapons and explosions as the battle reached its peak. Commander Soo-Jin Park stood on the bridge of the HMS Thunderbolt, her eyes focused on the holographic battle display floating before her. The advanced AI combat system she had helped develop painted the battlefield in clear, precise detail, showing both human and Imperial ships as they clashed in the void. "Combat AI, analyze pattern Delta 7, she commanded, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. The AI responded instantly, its quantum processors calculating countless possible moves and countermoves in microseconds. The holographic display shifted, highlighting weak points in the Imperial formation. "They're trying to regroup for another assault," her tactical officer reported, fingers dancing across his console. "Standard Imperial doctrine calls for a concentrated push through our center." Soo-Jin allowed herself a small smile. "That's exactly what we want them to think." "Combat AI, execute maneuver Phantom Dance." The HMS Thunderbolt responded with incredible precision, its advanced engines carrying it through a series of movements that seemed to defy physics. The massive warship moved like a dancer, weaving through enemy fire with impossible grace. Around it, the rest of the human fleet followed suit, their movements coordinated by the shared AI network. Aboard his flagship, now heavily damaged and struggling to maintain position, Admiral Min-ki gripped his command chair in frustration. His pristine uniform was now stained with smoke, and warning alarms blared from every station on his bridge. "Admiral, something's wrong with our FTL drives," his chief engineer reported, panic evident in his voice. "The system is online, but we can't establish a stable field. It's like the space around us is refusing to cooperate." Min-ki's face paled as he realized the implications. The Empire's entire military doctrine relied on their ability to make precise FTL jumps during battle, allowing them to outmaneuver any opponent. Without that advantage, they were fighting blind. Back on the Thunderbolt, Soo-Jin watched as Dr. Hee-Jun Kim's quantum disruptors did their work. The brilliant physicist had discovered a way to locally alter the properties of spacetime, making FTL travel impossible within the affected area. The Empire's greatest technological advantage had been turned into a liability. "Their formations are breaking down," Soo-Jin's executive officer reported. "Without FTL capability, they can't execute their standard combat patterns." The battle continued to unfold like a deadly dance, with human ships moving in perfect coordination, while Imperial vessels struggled to adapt to their new limitations. The combat eye predicted each enemy move seconds before it happened, allowing the human fleet to be 3 steps ahead at all times. "They're trying to compensate with conventional drives," Su Jin observed, watching the Imperial ships attempt to maintain their traditional combat formations. Combat Eye identify stress points in their new formation. The AI highlighted several key positions where the Imperial fleet's adaptation was weakest. Su Jin didn't hesitate. "All ships, concentrate fire on marked targets. Let's show them what true tactical superiority looks like." The human fleet moved as one, their attacks precisely coordinated by the shared AI network. Empire ships, trying to fight according to tactics developed over thousands of years, found themselves caught in a web of fire they couldn't escape or understand. Admiral Min-Ki watched helplessly as his carefully planned strategies fell apart. "How?" he demanded of no one in particular. "How can they predict our every move?" The answer became increasingly clear as the battle progressed. The humans hadn't just developed countermeasures to Imperial technology. They had revolutionized space combat itself. Every tactic, every strategy the Empire had perfected over millennia was being rendered obsolete by this upstart species. On the Thunderbolt's bridge, Su Jin received another update from the AI. "Enemy fleet cohesion at 30% and falling," it reported in its calm, artificial voice, predicting total tactical collapse within 15 minutes. "They never imagined we could do this," Su Jin said quietly. Their arrogance made them predictable. Combat Eye. Begin final phase of Operation Checkmate. The human fleet moved into its final attack pattern, a complex 3-dimensional web that trapped the remaining Imperial ships in a closing net of fire. The Combat Eye coordinated every shot, every movement with perfect precision, while the quantum disruptors continued to prevent any possibility of FTL escape. Admiral Min-Ki, watching his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled, finally understood the true extent of his civilization's miscalculation. They had dismissed humanity as primitive, never imagining that this young species had not only caught up to Imperial technology, but had surpassed it in ways they couldn't have predicted. The battle would be studied for generations to come, marking the moment when humanity announced its presence on the galactic stage not with words, but with an unprecedented display of tactical and technological superiority that shattered the Empire's assumptions forever. General Jae-in Cho stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the HSS Retribution, watching as green dots representing human ships advanced steadily through Imperial space. The warship's quantum engines hummed quietly as it led the biggest offensive humanity had ever launched. Each green marker represented a battle group, pushing deeper into enemy territory with calculated precision. Sixth Fleet has secured the Proxima sector, his communications officer reported. Imperial forces are retreating from all major strongholds in the region. A slight smile crossed Jae-in's weathered face. The Empire had never experienced an invasion of their own territory. Their border worlds, used to being the launching points for conquests, now found themselves on the defensive for the first time in centuries. Deep in Imperial space, Captain Dong-Huk Lee guided his stealth squadron through the gaps in enemy sensor coverage. His ships, using advanced phase shift technology, were practically invisible to Imperial detection systems. The squadron moved like shadows between the stars, approaching their latest target, a major Imperial supply depot. "All ships, maintain phase synchronization," Dong-Huk ordered quietly, though there was no need for silence in space. "Prepare to execute Strike Pattern Echo." The Imperial supply depot floated peacefully in orbit around a gas giant, its defenders unaware of the approaching threat. Massive cargo ships docked and undocked regularly, carrying vital supplies to the Empire's struggling defense forces. In her command center deep beneath the red sands of Mars, Strategic Director Narration studied multiple holographic displays showing the progress of humanity's grand offensive. Her war room was a marvel of human engineering, with real-time updates from every battle group and stealth squadron in Imperial space. The Empire's response remains predictable, she told her gathered staff officers. They continue to mass large fleets for counterattacks, exactly as our models predicted. She gestured to a cluster of red dots representing Imperial forces. They still believe superior numbers are the answer to everything. Back in deep space, Dong Huk's squadron struck with devastating effectiveness. Their phase-shifted weapons pierced Imperial shields as if they weren't there. Supply ships and defensive platforms erupted in silent explosions before they could even raise the alarm. Primary targets neutralized, his tactical officer reported. Secondary targets identified and marked. The Empire's carefully organized supply network began to unravel. Without reliable supply lines, their massive fleets found themselves stranded, unable to maintain their energy-hungry weapons and shields. General Jayan received regular updates on these stealth strikes. Captain Lee's squadron has eliminated another supply hub, his intelligence officer reported. Imperial forces in 3 sectors are now cut off from reinforcement and resupply. The general nodded approvingly. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, he muttered, watching as more Imperial units began to show signs of supply shortages. On Mars, Mi-Ray coordinated the movements of multiple battle groups, ensuring each strike maximized the chaos in Imperial logistics. They built their entire military around the concept of overwhelming force, she explained to a junior officer. But force means nothing without supplies, and their supply lines were designed for peace, not war. The Imperial response remained rigid and predictable. They continued to gather massive fleets, following doctrine that had served them for thousands of years. But against humanity's adaptive tactics and superior technology, these grand armadas became little more than targets. Another Imperial fleet is forming in Sector 7, one of Mi-Ray's analysts reported. Standard crescent formation, typical response force size. Mi-Ray almost pitied them. They're still fighting the last war, she said softly. Redirect Battle Group Theta to their flanks. Let's show them how obsolete their tactics have become. In deep space, Dong Huk's squadron completed another successful strike. All objectives achieved. He reported back to command, moving to next target. His ship slipped back into the darkness between stars, leaving behind another crippled piece of the Empire's logistics network. General Jayan watched with satisfaction as more Imperial worlds appeared within reach of his advancing forces. Begin the next phase, he ordered. Let's see how their rigid hierarchy handles true chaos. The human offensive continued to gain momentum. Each victory revealed more weaknesses in the Imperial defense strategy. Their mighty fleets, stripped of reliable supply lines and unable to adapt to human tactics, began to look less like an unstoppable force and more like relics of a dying age. Mi-Ray's coordination ensured that each human strike achieved maximum strategic impact. The Empire's military structure, designed to crush resistance through sheer force, proved increasingly vulnerable to humanity's surgical precision and adaptable strategy. The stars themselves seemed to watch as humanity's forces pressed deeper into Imperial space, dismantling piece by piece the military machine that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. The Empire was learning, too late, that the species they had dismissed as primitive had become their worst nightmare. The Imperial High Command Chamber on the capital world of Nova Imperialis fell silent as Admiral Eugene Kang slammed her fist on the ornate table. The sound echoed through the vast hall, causing several elder admirals to flinch. Her face, usually maintaining the perfect composure expected of an Imperial officer, showed barely contained fury. We cannot continue fighting this war like we have fought every other war, she declared, her voice carrying across the chamber. The holographic displays around them showed the devastating losses the Empire had suffered in recent months. Our traditional tactics are failing. Our strategies are obsolete. Grand Admiral Sungho, his ancient face lined with worry, leaned forward in his gilded chair. You forget yourself, Admiral Kang. The Empire has conquered 1,000 worlds using these same tactics. Our doctrine has stood for millennia. Yu Jin's laugh was bitter and sharp. And how many of those worlds had quantum phase technology? How many could disable our FTL drives? How many had AI systems that could predict our every move? Meanwhile, at the edges of Imperial space, Commander Se-Jin-O guided his task force through another precision strike. His ships provided cover as transport vessels landed on Proxima II, delivering weapons and supplies to the local resistance. The occupied world's population had risen up the moment they saw the Empire's weakness. The humans have shown us what warfare truly means in this age, Se-Jin transmitted to his fleet. Adaptation, innovation, freedom of action. His ships moved in irregular patterns, using tactics learned from studying human combat footage. Back in the High Command Chamber, the debate grew more heated. You propose we abandon 10,000 years of military tradition. Another elder admiral demanded, his face red with anger. I propose we survive, Yu Jin countered. Look at these casualty reports. Look at how many worlds we've lost. The humans aren't just beating us. They're revolutionizing warfare itself, while we cling to outdated doctrine. The holographic displays told the story clearly. Imperial worlds were falling one after another, either to direct human assault or to internal rebellion. The Empire's rigid command structure, once its greatest strength, had become a fatal weakness. On Proxima II, Se-Jin watched as another group of rebels successfully seized a planetary defense installation. His task force had armed and trained them in new tactics, showing them how to fight asymmetrically against superior forces. The Empire's garrison, trained only in conventional warfare, had no answer for these guerrilla tactics. Status report from Proxima II. One of Yu Jin's aides whispered, passing her a data tablet. She read it quickly, then held it up for all to see. Another world lost, she announced, not to human forces directly, but to their influence. They're not just defeating our military. They're showing our subjected worlds that we can be beaten. The chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. Some called for Yu Jin's arrest for defeatism. Others demanded even larger fleets be assembled for a massive counterattack. The chaos only proved her point about the Empire's inability to adapt. Se-Jin's task force continued its mission, moving from world to world, spreading not just weapons but ideas. The humans had taught them that victory didn't always require overwhelming force. Sometimes, a small force in the right place could accomplish more than a massive fleet. The rebels have secured the capital city, his ground forces commander reported. The Imperial garrison is requesting terms of surrender. Yu Jin stood in the center of the high command chamber, her voice rising above the chaos. While we argue about tradition and doctrine, humanity advances. While we gather our grand fleets, they strike at our supply lines. While we wait for orders from the chain of command, they give their officers freedom to adapt and innovate. The chamber fell silent again as real-time reports showed another Imperial fleet falling to human forces. The humans had used completely new tactics, nothing like what they'd shown before. The Empire's response, following standard doctrine, had been predicted and countered before it even began. We have two choices, Yu Jin declared. We can evolve, learning from our enemy, adopting new technologies and tactics, or we can perish, clinging to our pride and tradition as our empire crumbles around us. Se-Jin's success on Proxima II was being repeated across dozens of worlds. The Empire's hold on its territory was weakening not just from external assault, but from internal collapse. Their rigid hierarchy and inability to adapt had become their greatest enemies. As the debate in high command continued, more reports flooded in. Imperial crews were refusing to follow suicide orders. Colonial governors were declaring independence. The mighty empire, which had dominated the galaxy through sheer force for millennia, was facing a crisis unlike any in its history. Yu Jin watched her fellow officers argue and knew that time was running out. The empire had to change, had to learn from humanity's example, or it would not survive. The age of rigid doctrine and overwhelming force was over. A new era of warfare had begun, and the Empire was dangerously close to being left behind in the dust of history. The great crystal dome of the Lunar Peace Hall sparkled under Earth's reflected light, its transparent panels offering a breathtaking view of humanity's homeworld floating in the black sky above. Inside, the marble halls echoed with the footsteps of diplomats from 100 worlds gathered for this historic moment. Ambassador Junho Park stood at the grand podium, his ceremonial robes far simpler than the elaborate imperial garments he faced across the negotiating table. The peace accord lay before him, its quantum-encrypted pages glowing softly. Beside him, Admiral Ha-Won Kang cut an impressive figure in her formal military uniform, her medals reflecting the gentle light. For too long, the galaxy lived under the shadow of force, Junho began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. Today, we choose a different path. His eyes met those of the Imperial delegation, who no longer carried their former arrogance. The Imperial representatives, their once proud purple robes now modified to show humility, watched silently. They had learned respect for humanity the hard way, through decisive defeats and technological superiority they never imagined possible. This accord marks not an ending, but a beginning, Admiral Ha-Won added, her voice strong and clear. Earth extends its hand in friendship to all worlds, including our former adversaries. We seek partners, not subjects. The hall remained silent as Junho's pen moved across the accord. The document wasn't just a peace treaty. It established the new Galactic Council, where all species would have an equal voice. The Empire would retain its core worlds, but its former colonies would be free to choose their own path. In orbit above Luna, ships from a dozen species floated peacefully together. Human vessels with their distinctive phase-shift hulls patrolled alongside reformed Imperial cruisers. Former colony worlds had sent their own representatives, eager to join the new galactic community as equals. The age of empire is over, Junho declared as he finished signing. The age of cooperation begins today. He passed the accord to the Imperial delegation, whose hands trembled slightly as they added their own signatures. Admiral Ha-Won surveyed the gathered dignitaries. Representatives from worlds that had thrown off Imperial rule sat alongside their former masters. Human diplomatic corps members mingled with alien species, sharing ideas and building connections. We never sought to replace one empire with another, she addressed the assembly. Earth's leadership will be through innovation and example, not force. Our technology, our advancements, will be shared with all who wish to join us in building a better galaxy. The applause that followed was genuine, not the forced appreciation once common in Imperial ceremonies. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for generations saw hope for a new future. The humans had not only defeated the Empire, they had shown there was a better way. As the ceremony concluded, Junho and Ha-Won walked together through the Lunar Peace Hall's garden dome. Earth hung above them like a blue jewel, a reminder of how far humanity had come. They never thought we could do this, Junho remarked quietly. They saw our single system and assumed we were primitive. They never imagined we could change the galaxy itself. Ha-Won nodded, watching the diverse groups of beings mingling in the garden. Our greatest weapon wasn't our technology, she replied. It was our ability to imagine something better than empire, something worth fighting for. The days that followed saw rapid changes across the galaxy. Human quantum phase technology was shared with peaceful worlds. The new Galactic Council began its work, with representatives from all species working together to solve common challenges. Former Imperial worlds, freed from centuries of oppression, sought guidance from Earth, not through force but by choice. They saw in humanity a model for advancement that didn't require subjugation of others. The Imperial remnant, humbled but not destroyed, began its own transformation. Young officers who had seen humanity's effectiveness pushed for reforms, modernizing their society while maintaining their cultural heritage. As Earth's influence spread through cooperation rather than conquest, The galaxy entered a new golden age. Scientific advancement accelerated as species shared knowledge freely. Trade routes multiplied as worlds opened their borders. Cultural exchange flourished as ancient barriers fell. The humans had showed the galaxy that true strength lay not in the ability to conquer, but in the wisdom to cooperate. Their victory over the Empire hadn't just changed the balance of power, it had changed the very nature of galactic civilization. As the sun set on that historic day, Admiral Hawan stood at the Lunar Peace Hall's observation deck, watching ships from dozens of worlds moving peacefully through space. Humanity had not just survived its trial by fire, it had emerged as a beacon of hope for a galaxy ready for change. The Empire's greatest lesson wasn't just about underestimating humanity's military capability. It was about failing to understand that true power comes not from forcing others to submit, but from inspiring them to join you in building something greater than empire. A new age had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.